Hello everybody, this is Miss Camp again. We're here with our second set of rhetorical devices. We have numbers 11 through 20 this time. You will have a quiz on these terms on Thursday, October 1st. So learn them right. This time we're going to focus almost exclusively on syntax. I'm going to give you two different sets of descriptions of how you may describe a sentence. The first four deal with how the sentence is put together. The next four deal with the purpose of the sentence. So these are syntax terms. And then the last two are also about how the sentence is put together, but they're a different category. All right, so let's start with number 11. We have a simple sentence. A simple sentence is a sentence made up of only one independent clause and no dependent or subordinate clause. For example, Nexium can take up to 24 hours to work. Nexium is your subject, can take is your verb. These are either infinitives or prepositional phrases, so you do not have another independent clause. So that makes it a simple sentence. After school, I have to get gas. Here's your independent clause. After school is a phrase and not a clause because it doesn't have a verb. So it is a simple sentence. Mark and Christy have been married for 13 years and have been together for nearly 16. Here's my subject, Mark and Christy, and then I have two verbs, have been married, have been here. But we still only have one independent clause. There's nothing I can separate and make it a sentence by itself. So these are examples of simple sentences. Number 12 is a compound sentence. A compound sentence is a sentence made up of two or more independent clauses and no dependent or subordinate clause. Now, we've already talked about these in terms of when we use a comma and a fanboy or when we use a semicolon. But either way, each one of these here can stand alone and each one of these here can stand alone. But we want to put them together in one sentence. So we do it either with a comma and a conjunction or a semicolon. For instance, take an aspirin. That could stand alone. Call me in the morning can stand alone. Take an aspirin and call me in the morning. We put it in one sentence. That's a compound sentence. Next one, complex sentence. A complex sentence is a sentence made up of one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. It can have more than one dependent clause, but at least one. Okay, let's look at these examples. When school is over, that has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand alone. So it's a dependent clause. I have to get gas is an independent clause. It can stand alone. So that makes this a complex sentence. Dependent clause, independent clause. Marie is the girl who has the best grades. Marie is the girl is your independent clause. It can stand alone. Who has the best grades is a dependent clause. It has a subject, who, has the verb, but it cannot stand alone. So there's your dependent clause. Here's your independent clause. One customer needed a refund, which was promptly given. One customer needed a refund is your main sentence, your independent clause. Which was promptly given is your dependent clause. You have a subject, which, verb, was, because which is a pronoun. So it has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand alone. Okay? So these are complex sentences, a dependent clause and an independent clause. A compound complex sentence is a sentence that's made up of two or more independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. We love a restaurant. That is an independent clause. It can stand alone. That offers free chips and salsa is a dependent clause. It's got a subject and a verb, that offers, but it can't stand alone. You got a comma and a conjunction, your fanboy here, and then you've got another independent clause. We always go to Bronco. Okay, compound complex. Since you are so good with numbers, you do the math homework and I will do the English homework. Since you are so good with numbers is a dependent clause. You is the subject, are is the verb. But because of that since, it makes it a dependent clause. It can't stand alone. You do the math homework can stand alone. That's an independent clause. I will do the English homework. That's a complete sentence. It's an independent clause. I'll shake your hand after you promise to tell the truth, but I can't make that same promise to you. I'll shake your hand is a complete sentence. That's your independent clause. After you promise to tell the truth is your dependent clause. You've got a subject, you, promise, verb, but it can't stand alone because of that after. Comma and conjunction, fanboys. I can't make that same promise to you is a complete sentence too. So there's your independent clause. All right, the next ones. The next ones are types of sentences based on purpose of the sentence. Number 15 is declarative sentence, a sentence that makes a statement. You are declaring something to exist or to be true. For example, the dog obeys well. I love that shirt. She cheats all the time. Just most of the time simply stating an observation. Number 16, interrogative sentence. That's a question. When you ask a question, you are interrogating, so it is an interrogative sentence. What are we having for lunch today? Who do you think you are? How will we ever get through AP English? Interrogative sentences are questions. Number 17, an imperative sentence is a sentence that makes a command. It tells someone to do something. And usually, you is understood to be the subject of the sentence. Pass the salt, please. Really, what I'm saying is, you pass the salt, please. And you will be the subject, passes the verb, and it is an imperative sentence because I am giving a command. I'm telling you what to do. Get your homework done or shut the front door. You probably hear imperative sentences from me, your other teachers, and your parents. We like to boss you around, don't we? Okay, number 18, an exclamatory sentence is the one that you only have two of to use in your life. It is an exclamation mark sentence. It's a sentence that shout. Do not use it, as I've told you before, unless you're literally shouting. So if you're quoting somebody shouting at a baseball game or at a football game or because there's a emergency, then you would use it, as in run for your life. Notice I didn't scream, though. I didn't want to scare you while you're listening to my voice. All right. Here, the last two are kind of tricky. But once you figure them out, it's no big deal. A cumulative sentence has an independent clause at the beginning and then is followed by a bunch of subordinate clauses or phrases that supply additional detail. And what that means is the main sentence is up front, and then the writer tags on all these extra phrases that accumulate later. For instance, the women move through the streets as winged messengers, twirling around each other in slow motion, peeking inside homes and watching the easy sleep of men and women. Your main sentence is this underlined part. The women move through the streets as winged messengers. And all this added on at the end is just extra detailed descriptions added on at the end. That makes it a cumulative sentence. Here's another one. It is a wilderness that is beautiful, dangerous, abundant, oblivious of us, mysterious, never to be conquered or controlled or second-guessed or known more than a little. Your main sentence is right here. It is a wilderness. And then everything else is added extra information. That makes it a cumulative sentence. You may want to use a cumulative sentence to add details and imagery or to help create a visual picture of what you've been describing. This instance, what he's doing is he's given adjectives to describe this wilderness. He adds it all on the end. Here we're getting some visual imagery of the women at the beginning of the sentence. Sometimes it's to create a certain rhythm. Maybe you want to replicate the rhythm of the women as they move, so you add the phrases on at the end. Right, the opposite of that is number 20. Number 20 is a periodic sentence, and that's a sentence that builds toward and ends with the main clause. You leave the independent clause, the main sentence, at the end of the sentence. You have lots of phrases early on, lots of maybe even dependent clauses that build toward that last sentence. For example, from my boy, Ralph Waldo Emerson, crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight under a clouded sky, without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. Here's your main sentence, and he gives you all this description at the beginning. Same thing here. Often, after filling several notebooks with dozens of interviews, reading several books, diving into all manner of research materials, and making research trips, when I sit down to write, I do so without looking at my notes at all. Here's your main sentence. And he gives you all this detail and setup at the beginning. And so you might want to use a periodic sentence to build anticipation or suspense. It creates an uprising of energy because you're building, you're waiting for the last clause that really tells you what the sentence is about. I hope you enjoyed this little syntax lesson. Study these terms, and we'll have a test on Thursday, October 1st. Talk to you later. Bye.